For me, brand is everything.
Hey, my guest on this episode of the podcast is Dmitry Shamis. He is an OG B2B marketer. He ran the brand team at HubSpot for 8 years, managed a team of 155 creatives, developers, people across the marketing org. We talk about the number one thing that B2B marketers need to do today, which is to find a way to help your brand stand out.
And when I think about brand, yes, it's those standard kind of branding elements, but it's also that story and how it is infused into everything you do.
We also talk about the role of AI. That's all everyone's talking about is AI right now. But Dmitry doesn't feel like it's going to be the thing that's going to disrupt creativity and it's going to disrupt branding. Plus, he talks about this concept of busy work in marketing and why maybe your team is drowning in busy work and how to stop that and be more effective and more efficient no matter what team size you have.
When I think about busy work, just overall, it's all of these things that you know are coming. And then the day they show up on your plate, you're like, whoa, what is this?
Here's my conversation with Dmitry.
1, 2, 3, 4. Exit.
I finally got Dmitry on the pod. We've rescheduled 15 times for all sorts of, vomiting and illnesses and snow days and nonsense. But we're here now. Dmitry had my favorite line that I've quoted more, that I've used in the last year, which is when Dmitry was getting on a plane to go to Drive, our event with Exit 5, he posted a picture on LinkedIn, and I was so nervous about the event. Are people going to show up? And he posts, I'm on my way to the B2B marketing Mecca, Vermont. And we haven't made that our tagline yet, but we should.
I feel like it needs to be like that, like for Drive 25.
Drive 25. That's hot. I got to write that down. Drive 25, baby.
Drive 25. Yeah, that literally just happened. But yeah, Drive 25, B2B Mecca. It was funny. I'm like literally sitting there just waiting to get on an airplane. And I'm like, I haven't posted on LinkedIn today because obviously like I'm like you, I'm a thought leader and I need to do that. And I was like,
whoa. You don't have 177,000 followers on LinkedIn, dog. Relax.
Well, not
relax.
You, but like, are you kidding me? Like, we're both sharing thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, you're an actual thought leader. So I got a couple of things that I want to talk to you about on this podcast. But first, just quickly give people context who you are, what you're doing. You're out. You have a solo business today. You were at HubSpot for almost a decade. Give me the short summary of who you are and what you've done in this world of B2B marketing.
Absolutely. My name is Dmitry Shamis. I'm the founder of a company called The Creative Brand, also world premiere for you. I'm starting an agency as well, co-founding an agency with my good friend Jen Proud called Oh Snap.
Wow. I love that. Okay, let's talk about that in a sec. All right. It's okay.
Yeah, really excited about that. But I went to school for sports management, thought I was going to be a sports agent, realized I like sports way more than the business of sports, which like totally led me down this weird path of non-traditional life where I became a talent agent, focused on like TV and like media, decided that wasn't working for me, going to quit my job, learn how to code, which is totally normal, rational thing to do as well. I bounced around a little bit, ended up at HubSpot as a dev, ended up taking over the web team. Then I took over the creative team where I oversaw the brand, grew that team to like 155 people over the course of 8 years, which is wild. And then one day it was time to go off on my own. And, one of the cool things that I did at HubSpot was really like pioneer this sort of like self-service model, which I've been helping businesses build out. So, I imagine we'll talk about this to a certain extent, but there's too much busy work. There's too much run rate work. There's like too many teams are bogged down with like really like incremental stuff. And that's what's getting in the way of them actually doing like real work and taking big, meaningful swings. So just trying to free them up to do cool stuff.
Oh, okay. We could jump into that right now. I think it's such a good topic, but so when you were at, let's talk about the nature of like what was brand at HubSpot, and you ran a 155 person brand team. Last week I wrote on LinkedIn about this concept of brand, and I think I talked to a lot of founders or marketers. You see it in Exit 5. There's a bunch of different definitions of brand. How do you think the people listening to this, and based on what you did at HubSpot or how your point of view has changed, like what is brand? What is the role of brand? Because there's like the creative side of things. There's like the how do we look and feel, and there's a kind of in-house creative agency. But then there's also the brand, which is like the reputation, right? The brand channels. You're wise in this area, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
I mean, for me, brand is it's like the worst definition, but it's everything. And the reason why I say that is because your brand needs to be infused throughout your business. So yes, it's your colors, it's your messaging, it's your logo, but it's also tied into that unique perspective and point of view that you have. So, there's generally a reason, in my opinion, why people start businesses, companies, provide services, whatever it might be. And usually it's because someone else is doing it wrong. And so, you have this general idea and this general thought, and that, in my opinion, is what needs to be rooted in your entire business. Like that needs to come through in your marketing, that needs to come through in your sales, it needs to come through in your customer service. That brand needs to be felt in your recruiting efforts, like anything and everything. So like when I think about brand, yes, it's those like standard kind of branding elements, but it's also that story and how it is infused into everything you do.
How do you play offense with a brand? Obviously, we're at HubSpot size and scale. You have budget. The other teams want to do crazy brand things like Super Bowl ads, right? But for the maybe earlier stage marketers here, how do you think about making brand investments, and what would the playbook there be?
I mean, it's different for every company, right? I hate the "it depends" answer. I know, but like, it's one of those things where you need to understand where your audience is and go meet them there. And so that's where, if they're on LinkedIn, start creating content for LinkedIn. If they're on Reddit, shout out Ross Simmons, like, go be on Reddit. But
how much do you think? So you kind of went right to LinkedIn and content there, and I think this is it for me. Mm-hmm. I think people underrate, like when we talk about brand, I feel like people miss out that like a huge part of the brand thing is the point of view. It's the company story. It's like what do you have to say to the market? And then the brand is like how you execute on that. Do you feel me on that?
100%. I think so many companies are like, oh, we need a brand. And that literally means like, we need a primary color. We need a cool looking logo, and we need a website that looks somewhat put together. And then that's it. And then everyone kind of like go off and be free and do whatever the hell you want to do. And then they're like, nobody knows what we do. No one knows what we stand for. And no one within the company internally is saying the same thing. And you have all this misinformation, whatever, going out and about. And so I think like a big part of it is, right, you rally people together and then you share that common message across all of your different touch points. So I'm right there with you. Like the point of view is at the core of everything. Like your point of view should dictate the colors you choose. Your point of view should dictate what your logo looks like. Your point of view should dictate your mission and vision and get everyone aligned, because your point of view is actually the one kind of differentiated thing that you're going to have from your competition.
Do you have if you're working with someone, do you have a framework for like defining this point of view? Like if I'm a founder, you're going to work with me. I don't have one. I kind of, it's like a combination of a bunch of things I've learned over the years, books I've read, I like StoryBrand. I like April Dunford. I like some of the classic, Al Reese and Jack Trout stuff. I don't have really like a template or a doc. It just kind of, it's more of like I have a founder friend that I'm kind of, helping out on the side in my, limited in my copious free time that I have. But it's fun because I just they're building a company in the AI space, and it's fun to help shape that narrative. But I'm realizing there isn't like one template that we have. One of my favorite exercises is like we're writing an article that's like a blog. It's a blog post, but it's like if you were on stage giving a speech about like the future of the work, future of work and where the world is going. And I found that that's an awesome way to do it. How do you like to go and capture that narrative?
I like to piss people off, honestly. I want to know what that thing was that like broke them. Like what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Because again, like I think there's this underlying reason why anyone goes and does anything. And I want to understand what that is and how to frame that story up in a somewhat positive way.
So in that example, like if you have to push, right? I was a guest on somebody else's call before this, and they were like, the founder's kind of just like an engineer and they wanted to build an email tool, so they built an email tool. How do I push them on point of view? And I'm like, well, that's tough, right? Like if you just got in the business to make another email tool and make money, like those are the harder companies to work with. I feel like what you want as a marketer is like the founder, and it's why I wrote the founder brand book, is like you want the founder who like got into business for a particular reason. They had some previous pain and skill set, right? Can you force that onto someone? Like, can you retrofit that, or does it have to be a part of the DNA?
I think you can retrofit it if you need to, because I'm sure even with this email client, there was something about Gmail or Superhuman or whatever that just wasn't working, that wasn't doing it for them, right? Like, when I say I try to piss people off, like it's not like I want someone angry and furious and beating the table. Right? I think that would be cool because that shows you the emotional resonance of whatever their reasoning or thinking was. But there's always going to be some reason, and either it's super obvious on day one or it becomes more obvious, a month, a year, 2, 5, whatever in. And you can come back to it, but you still on day one, I think, need to think about what is going to set you apart. Because if you go to market with, hey, we built another email client, who cares? Like are you going to go click that link or you open that email, do whatever? No, right? Like you want to see that subject line or that video with the headline of just like email is broken. It's 2025. Email is dead, right? Like we all know email is dead. So I want that differing opinion. So I'd prefer it on day one, but no, you can retrofit it if you need to.
Okay, so you piss people off. So we start going on that topic. How do you agitate that, and how do you get that out? Is it just trading Slack messages back and forth? Is it interviews? Is it calls? Like how do you get to that?
I prefer doing it on a call and just asking questions like I'm a 5-year-old. Just like why? Tell me more. Like, or that doesn't make sense. I mean, we can maybe try role playing it if you want, but really what it comes down to is just pushing. Because what everyone generally tries to do is that like kind of, I love everyone in the space and we're all friends and we're just trying to carve out our own thing, whatever. But like, I don't want that friendly response. I want that like, I hate those guys because of X, Y, and Z. And then we say, okay, so your X and Y here are actually the thing. This is what you care about. This is the story that you're trying to tell. And this is what we're trying to build as a result of that. Versus just like, I'm just going to pick on them now. Like I'm building another email client because nothing about that works for me.
How much does the like landscape of the market and existing tools, existing kind of companies and products and features, for me, I would like lay out the other companies that we would hypothetically compete with, and there's this kind of exercise of trying to find the gaps and opportunities. Do you do something like that? Like you need the context of the market at the same time, right?
Yeah, but I think that comes second. Because I think when you're looking to fill a gap, you may not be telling the full story or you may not be hitting like your authentic beats. I think when you understand why you're doing something and then you assess the gaps, you can do a better job. Because even if there's overlap, it's not going to be one-to-one. You're still going to have something that stands out. And I'm always more concerned with what I'm doing or what my clients are doing versus what my competitors are doing. Because if my competitors were that good, I probably wouldn't have a job.
So you don't want to do it. You need to make the first move based on your point of view, not in reaction to someone else.
100%. That's the way I approach it. Like any kind of brand work I do, any kind of ops process work, whatever it might be, right? Like the full spectrum of it all. I'm always more concerned with what's going on inside the house than outside the house. Like you need to understand what the competitive landscape looks like. You need to understand what's going on. But I feel like in marketing, we do this weird thing where we worry so much about our competition that we become them. And that's where everyone kind of just blends in.
You just become the norm. It's just like a lot of sameness. Everyone's always done it that way. There's a great book by you're a sports guy, so this reference will land with you. But there's a great classic management book that people throw around a lot, which is Bill Walsh, the old 49ers coach. The score takes care of itself. And in that book, he has a line where he says, I forget exactly what it is, but it's basically like a lot of times inside of a company, the answer is like, well, that's the way we've always done it. And he's like, that's the way we've always done it, is a team that's setting themselves up to lose to a team who's not doing it that way anymore. And especially this is true as the company gets larger and you bring in new people, it's very easy to be like, well, we've always gotten a booth at Dreamforce, and so we're always going to do it. And it's like, well, let's question everything, right? I love the idea of questioning everything. Why do we have to do it this way? What is our way? And I do think so much of marketing is a game of attention and finding the opportunities. And so just because you've always done it that way, how can we do something completely different? And that is the way you're going to get someone to pay attention to you. But it's a trick. It's hard to do that internally. And even if it's not internal, you're often looking at all the other companies and you're like, well, everyone that's sold this email product has always done it this way. But I think that's exactly the opportunity.
Well, here's like a quick anecdote. So years ago, when I was still running web at HubSpot, there was a financial services company. I'm not going to say the name, but we would look at their website for inspiration. We were like, oh, we like the way that they're laying things out. We like the way that they're doing interactions. We like this and that. And a couple of years later, I met the person that ran the website there, and I was like, oh, I've always looked at your website as inspiration. And they were like, no way, because I've always looked at your website for inspiration. So literally, it's just like, it's cyclical. We're like, you start copying from one another and you just become this like weird amalgamation. And that's what the whole, like, this is the way it's always been done thing is, where it's like, oh, well, this is how so-and-so does it, so this is how we should do it. Like, no. Like Bill Walsh probably knows a thing or two about winning and standing out, right? So you can't worry about how it's always been done. You have to do it your way, and hopefully that's the right way.
How do you push how would you guide a founder to I feel like it's differentiation is the hardest thing today because of how much sameness there is out there. And maybe for the marketers that are listening, can you just talk about how you can't create differentiation in a vacuum? It's got to be a whole company effort, especially I don't think we talk so much in Exit 5 and on this podcast and on LinkedIn about sales and marketing alignment. I don't think there's enough conversation about product and marketing alignment. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I mean, you need to include aspects of your marketing within your product. Yes, from a branding standpoint, but also from like a messaging standpoint. You look at like some of these project management software options out there. You close a task, there's confetti and unicorns and all like these fun kind of interactive moments that occur. Those make the customer and the user feel good. They're fun. But if you're thinking about it from just like a pure productivity lens, which a lot of product folks do, you're not going to get that. If you're thinking about it just from like a pure interaction and fun and attention, awareness grabbing kind of thing, like marketers tend to do, you're not going to be able to actually be productive. So like you need to forge these relationships, you need to have these conversations, and you need to find the appropriate middle ground. And it's the same thing on like the marketing side, where like, if you think about your website, it's the number one product sales tool that you have. So you can't just avoid the product. You can't skip it. You can't like pretend that it doesn't exist if it's not like the sexiest or most fun thing. You have to figure out where that line is for marketing to take over, but for the product to still get its shine. And a lot of that happens from relationship building and from trust ultimately. Like I've worked with teams where it's like, oh, well, product says it needs to be like this, so that's the way it is. And those are the teams that always have the most boring marketing you've ever seen. So a lot of it is about trust building, and like you have to do that in stages. You have to find small opportunities and small projects to say, hey, what if we just try this? Like if it wins, great. If it doesn't, no big deal, not a big loss, right? Like you have to find an advocate. I talk about this with like self-service a lot, because a lot of organizations that I'll work with will be like, oh, well, the marketers don't want to do this, or the salespeople don't want to do that. And it's just like, you got to find one person. Find one person on that team that sees things the way that you do, or at least is willing to listen. Work with them to implement some sort of experiment within their area of expertise. Get a win, and walk over to the next person. Be like, this is what we did together, and use that to start building. It's a snowball effect, right? Because like also once people see their peers being successful, they want a piece of that action as well, and that's where you start. Like you accumulate wins. other people want in, you start building those relationships, and that's where you start like really figuring out where that line is of how you balance marketing and product.
We talked about Busywork. I've been at companies and I've advised companies, and there's often this, the marketing team is never not busy, right? I've never been around a marketing team where no one's doing anything. It's actually usually the opposite approach, which is like there's lots of stuff going on. There's so many emails going out. There's webinars, there's new ads, there's events we're going to go to, there's new pages we got to make on the website, there's new campaigns we got to be running. Sales needs this, the HR teams need da 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 da. The marketing team is always busy, but the worst case scenario is when the marketing team is super busy, everyone's on the verge of burning out, but the company is not hitting their goals. And that's something, and I like how you frame it as busy work. This is a symptom. This is something that's going on at a lot of companies. Let's dive into this and talk about it a little bit.
I love it. Yeah. It's, and just when I think about busy work, just overall, it's all of those things that you just mentioned. And it's like the cleanup after all of those things. Like they're regularly scheduled. They're always happening. They're predictable. They're going to happen. What's going to happen after the fact in terms of, well, that webinar, we're going to cut it down into clips and we're going to make social posts for it. We're going to write 3 blog posts, like all of these things that are coming. And then the day they show up on your plate, you're like, whoa, what is this? I didn't know. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Let me read you this. Actually, this is a CMO posted this in our CMO club at Exit 5. They wrote, how do your teams handle many different projects and requests at the same time? The team always complains about workload, but that doesn't seem to be the real issue. It's more that they feel disconnected and stressed when lots of people are working on lots of things at the same time. We use Jira and that works, so it's not a project management issue. I'm wondering if doing sprints where people work more simultaneously on the same project at the same time would be a solution, or if this will lead to other problems. I also can imagine you can handle the same amount of projects, but it will be more sequenced if we do it this way rather than running in parallel. Curious to understand how you organize your teams and projects. We're a B2B SaaS company with 4 different products directed at 3 different target audiences. There's 20 people on the team. My answer was like, well, is everything of equal importance? Do all these things map back to the 1 or 2 key goals right now? It's hard to do everything and it's hard to say no, but sometimes less is more and more focused effort is the way. And then they said back to me, yeah, but is only 1 or 2 key goals per quarter. That seems very little given the size of our team. But isn't this the actual issue here? Do we need to be doing all these things?
No, it's purely prioritization. And either it's leaders who don't know what's important, or it's leaders who don't like to say no or don't want to say no. And you absolutely have to make calls. Like 99% of the time that I run into this issue with clients, it's because they don't know what their goals are, or they as individuals have like, I have to get this many leads or have this many meetings booked, whatever it might be. And they're in direct competition with their peer, as opposed to everyone having like 1 or 2 high level goals that they're all umbrellaed under. So this, like what you're reading to me is a pure prioritization issue. And then the other part of it is, fine, whatever. Let's say these are priorities. Let's say these are important and they all need to get done. It becomes a resourcing issue in terms of like, does your team need to be responsible for all of these things? Are there pieces of this that you could outsource on a regular basis? Are there pieces of this that you can automate? Are there pieces of this that you could use AI to help you with? Like this, going back to the whole like Bill Walsh, like this is the way it's always been done. Like there's a lot of that here where it's like, well, we've always done webinars and we've always done the same thing after the fact. So we're going to continue doing that, regardless of if it's working or if it's actually meaningful to the business. It's much harder to like kill those projects to move on to the next ones. And you'll never do that if you don't actually stop to prioritize what is and isn't important. If it's a keeping the lights on mentality.
So it comes back to like articulating having very clear company goals for marketing, and then being able to say, and here's how we're going to go do them. Is it like a marketing strategy? You were OG HubSpot. I think you worked there for a long time. I don't know if my experience is proper, but I felt like they did a good job of the company goal setting activity was good because I feel like you knew what the key initiatives were for the company. And it's like, here are the key initiatives for the company, because marketing can do anything. I say this on every damn podcast, but everything in marketing works. Everything has been proved. TikTok works, YouTube works, ABM works, events work, all that stuff works. But I don't want to do all that. I don't want to do all this stuff. Like, so what are the company goals? And marketing exists to serve the company and help us hit our company goals. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, like I have like an all-time favorite goal. It's something I think about weirdly all the time. And this was at HubSpot. And when the company went multi-product, we had to do two things: break the perception that it was marketing only, and break the perception that was only SMB. And that was amazing because it was like this really healthy guardrail that allowed every individual on the team to assess whether what they were doing was actually helping with breaking those perceptions. If you are working on a project and it was like marketing automation only, then no, you're not actually hitting the goal, regardless of the leads it might have driven, the signups, whatever it might have been. Like, we're thinking about all in one, we're thinking about platform, suite, whatever the language was at the time. And it was the same thing where it's just like, oh, you know what? This campaign that you're launching, is it for SMBs or is it for enterprise? And if it was for SMB, like, is this really the right thing? Is this what we need to be doing when we're trying to break that perception? So that's a part of it as well, where I think like you need to be thinking about these high level goals. You need to be setting them. They need to be achievable, like ambitious, but achievable. And they need to allow for people to like have the ability to make decisions against them, because I think that's the other part of like the piece that you read from the CMO Club. Like, it also sounds like, it's like project management isn't an issue. Why? Because everything is listed in Jira. That doesn't mean that project management isn't an issue. There's still clearly a bottleneck somewhere where people aren't fully comfortable in making certain decisions and they're waiting for certain orders to kind of come down. So there's a lot here, but you want to create goals at that high level that give people the room to operate, but that are also very clear in what those expectations are ultimately going to be. And then you can create like actual numerical goals against them.
What about so I feel like usually the company goals are like, we want to deliver, this number of this in pipeline. And, those things are easier to set goals around. How do you make the case to go out and do some of back to our conversation about brand, the more brand oriented investments, that maybe are harder to measure or harder to directly attribute to pipeline, but how do you make them a key part of like the work that the marketing team should be doing? Because I found that it's oftentimes like, yeah, we want to start a show, we want to start a podcast because we believe in X, Y, and Z, but like nobody has the time to do it. We're overloaded with work. We got too much busy work. And maybe podcast is a bad example, but I think you know what I'm trying to get at.
100%. I think it's about speaking their language, which I know is a very common thing that people say and, like technique that they talk about. But you've got to, the people with the money, you got to convince them to give you some of that. And the way you're not going to do that by using terminology like awareness and, all those kind of key, there's positive sentiment attached and, unaided recall is huge. Like, no one cares about that. They care about like, are they getting in the pipeline and how are they getting in the pipeline? And so like, the way I've always talked about it was like through fishing. Which is weird because I'm not like a huge fisherman, but I've ran with this for years now, where most teams, like when they think about growth or like performance, you're fishing within a pond, and you're hitting those fish with messaging, advertisements, whatever. And one of two things is going to happen: either you catch the fish, or the fish learn to avoid what you're trying to do. One way or the other, that pond hasn't changed in terms of what's in there. And so you need to refill that pond. And that's where a lot of the brand plays come in, where what you're trying to do is constantly pump new fish into that pond so that those growth strategies and those performance strategies can be effective. When you talk about it through that standpoint, and you can measure, right, like what's, you talk about this all the time where it's like you're not necessarily doing like direct attribution with UTMs or whatever, but like you don't need to. Who's coming in through the pod, who's coming in through the newsletter, who's coming in through LinkedIn. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like when you can showcase how you're then refilling that pond, like with a billboard, with a podcast, with whatever it might be, a YouTube show, people will start to understand and you'll be able to correlate. But if you go into that conversation just like, oh, you know what, no one knows who we are, and we need to invest, $500,000 in getting whatever program off the ground, you're just going to get laughed at.
I was talking about this the other day, where a common trait I think among strong marketers and marketing leaders is that, again, everything can work, but it's being able to articulate, like, here's what our company, like, marketing, you work at a company because you're trying to help the company achieve the company goal, and marketing is the way you do that. And so having an opinion about how the company needs to do marketing to achieve the goal, and then being able to articulate like all of the things that you're doing, talk about them in the broader set. Like when I worked at HubSpot, for example, the reason I got the job at HubSpot was because they wanted to start a podcast, because Mike, who was a CMO, they wanted to reach more of an executive audience. And this was in 2015. And so HubSpot was trying to like move more up market. They had a strong following among, Marketing Mary, the marketing manager, persona, right? But they wanted to reach more executives. And so his hypothesis was, like, hey, I'm a big time CMO. I'm in the car. I'm listening to podcasts. This is how I get information. We want to start a podcast because we think that we can attract an executive audience, and he's going to host it. He has a strong network of execs. We're going to build this show. And I thought that was a great example. So it's not just like, yeah, we're going to do a podcast because everyone's doing podcasts are cool. It's like, no, intentionally we see this, and we need to look at leading indicators like downloads and like ratings and reviews, right? But we're going to look at this investment over time, and maybe it's going to be months or years later, and we're going to start to see that we're getting into conversations because someone happens to become a fan because, oh, I listened to your podcast with so-and-so. That was awesome. Now I'm evaluating HubSpot versus Marketo, and I think relatively the features are the same, but I really feel like I have a relationship with you and I like your stuff, and so I'm going to buy from you. Perfect example of being able to talk about a channel and how it fits into the company strategy, right?
Yeah, but if that conversation started with, exactly like you just said it, like, we should start a podcast because everyone's starting a podcast. Like, would it ever have happened? No, right? Like it happened, and I mean, whatever, right? Like Mike actually was the one who's making that decision, so maybe that's not the greatest example. But if you or I were the ones who were like, oh, we should start a podcast because everyone else is doing it, like people would look at us sideways because there's no proof, there's no indication that it might work, and there's no rationale around why you would do that thing besides the fact that everyone else is doing it. And going back to like what we were saying earlier around the competition, like who cares? Like, who cares that the competition has a podcast? Like, is it actually working? Is it effective? Is it doing what it needs to do?
Yeah, and can we do it our way? I was talking about this before, where like the niche can be you. It can be the way you do it, right? Like, you talked about being a sports agent in a past life, right? There's a million agents, right? But maybe someone just has a way that they see the world that's different, or you relate to them better, or they have a philosophy that's different. That's going to be the differentiator. It's like, well, yeah, everybody has a podcast, but here it's going to be our way, right? Mm-hmm. This is how we're going to do it. That can be the differentiator. That
needs to be the differentiator because, again, like how many interview podcasts are there, right? Like, this format that we're doing right now, it's not unique. What's unique is you. What's unique is how you approach it and the questions you ask and the relationships that you have, right? Like, but there are plenty of other marketing podcasts that get maybe that's because they don't have thought leaders with 177,000 followers leading them, but
no big deal.
No big NBD. But just the point is, like, if you go into it just trying to do the bare minimum or just doing what everyone else is doing, you're going to fade into the background. You have to have something that sets you apart. In this case, it's you. In the case of HubSpot, it was Mike in those early days, right? Like, whatever it is, like you have to figure out what that differentiator is. You have to really believe in it, and then you take that to market in whatever way it makes the most sense.
What role do you see AI playing in the future of B2B marketing specifically? What's interesting to you? What's overhyped? Where do you think we're going?
I mean, I think a lot of it is overhyped, just period. And this is coming as someone who has built AI solutions for a long, long time. Like, I mean, the colloquial definition of AI has changed over time, but like, the reality is just where it's at right now and the way people are thinking about it feels a bit lazy to me. and they just want AI to be the ultimate solution to everything. And like what we realize is AI is not actually that great at writing. It's not that great at design. It's not that great at a lot of things. What it is great at is doing your dirty work. Like the things that take a ton of time, the things that take a lot of like mental calories that you don't want to do, like that's what AI is for. Like I always say this line of like, don't outsource your thinking, nor never outsource your thinking. And that's because AI doesn't have that lived in experience, doesn't have that human experience. It doesn't have the observational skills that you as a human being do. Therefore, like the stuff that it generates is just mediocre crap.
Yeah, I do worry sometimes that a lot of us are gonna forget how to use our actual brains because we ask ChatGPT for everything, and the real beauty is in the art. It's like it's in the nuance. It's in the like things that are authentic and not perfect. It's like the improvised jazz, or like in hip hop, the producer, Jay Dilla had that like particular like flow of his beats that would be hard to, the reason he was popular and his music sounds like that is because it wasn't very computerized. And so there is I think humans, we still have to be the tastemakers, right? There's an element of that, I wonder. And sometimes I'm like, damn it, Dave, you don't need to, I'll be like on a run and I'll be like, I got to ask ChatGPT why, how come, in 1997, this, I'm like, no, that doesn't matter. Just forget it. Just continue on with your life. You don't need to go to ask ChatGPT everything.
But that's fine because you would have done that with Google beforehand too. It's like I think it's totally fine to want to know the answer to a question because you're not going to go to the library and dig into encyclopedias and journals and all those things. Like there's no reason for you to. That's like the perfect use case. It has now saved you hours and days and weeks of research time to get you where you need to go. But if you're just like, okay, now write me a blog post and you just hit publish without reading that thing or understanding it or even trying to figure out why it's relevant for your audience, that's where I think you're messing up. And that's where I think a lot of people end up messing up because the information is relevant. Of course it's relevant. But the way you shape it and put it in front of your audience, that's what makes it actually valuable. And we've like foregone that step as of late. And it's been nice to see a little bit of pushback on AI. And I say this as someone who loves AI and uses it in my day-to-day all the time. But I've loved seeing people go like, you know what? It's actually not as hot as we thought it was going to be. We're gonna figure out what the right use cases are and then ignore all the noise that we hear on a day-to-day basis.
All right, Dmitry hates AI. You heard it here first. No, but let's talk about. But don't you think though, like if you look back to like running a creative team or like you started out on the running the website and the web team, 155 people, big org, lots of stuff. There is an area though for even though like a lot of it is maybe overhyped. There is an area though that I am very bullish on, which is just the ability to turn more of us marketers into full stack marketers. The things that like back in the day, I used to have to like, I needed a web page done and I needed to submit the brief and then I have to wait for the creative team to make the image. And then like, there's a lot of that. I do think a lot of that is going to shrink. Do you believe me on that side of things from a creation standpoint? Like the way that I, as a marketer, can go from 0 to 1 now is much faster than me being like, yeah, I submitted the design request to, and granted, AI design still sucks. Everyone has, 9 fingers or like one really long ear or something. But I do think there's a lot of that's going to make the job of marketing better.
I think you just nailed like Busywork in a nutshell, honestly. Like, because you're waiting for that graphic. The designers don't want to make that graphic either. It's not exactly exciting work. And so that's where it's like maybe AI isn't the solution, but that's where a Canva template actually suits you, where you have a repository of photography, you understand what messaging looks like, you have an easy to use template that you could just pop an image into, update the headline and export in 5 minutes and use that. Like, I think that's the side of this that's been forgotten about a little bit. But yeah, like, this is the work that needs to go away. This is the work that needs to disappear and be systematized, automated, whatever. Because like, how many times have you sat in a room and had like this amazing idea and wished that you could run at it full speed? But it's like, well, we have 20 other projects ahead of it in the queue. And like, I don't think we can get rid of this one or that one, but like, they're all garbage work at the end of the day if you're truly honest with yourself.
All right, tell me about Oh Snap. So you're going to go start an agency?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really exciting. So Jen Proud, she was director of design at HubSpot when I was running creative. And she and I are very much on the same page in terms of like thinking about systems and scale and growth. And
Wait. Do neither of you have like stock or anything? You guys still work? You haven't made all the money. HubSpot stock continues to rip. Why you got to go do this?
I don't know. It's maybe we're just not good at sitting still, but we've been thinking a lot about like future proofing brands, because my whole thing as of late has been like you work with an agency, and like there's some great agencies out there. I'm not going to just like trash the whole industry, but you work with some of these agencies and they hand you a PDF and that's it, and like they disappear into the mist unless you throw them on retainer or something like that. They don't help you implement your brand. They don't help with anything other than like here's one headline, here's your mission, your vision, here's some branding. So the way we're thinking about it is like how do we one, just take your brand and get you prepared for that next stage. Like we talk a lot about inflection points, where it's like you have this ability to go up or go down depending on your choice, but you ultimately want to put yourself in a position where you're using the right technology, your branding is on point and can scale in a way where it's more evolutionary rather than having to flip the switch every time you do any kind of rebrand. You want to be thinking about your operations and your processes and how those help you get to where you're going. You want to think about those AI and automation use cases. So we're approaching brand from a really kind of like systems focused area, where we want to create something for our clients that like look really good, obviously, but also work with them today and a year from now and 5 years from now and all the things.
So it's a creative agency?
It's a creative agency. Yeah. We're doing like, we're not doing all of the things. We're going to work with partners to help, like, like I'm not writing code anymore. No one.
Yeah. But you can you basically, somebody can pay you to basically, they don't care if those are full-time employees or not. How can you get the job done? And is the deliverable, I've always thought about like the main deliverable should be the website. Everyone needs a website with a strong creative and personality. Are you going to do website?
Yeah, that's going to be a big part of it for sure.
Because I think that's a piece of like when we were talking about narrative earlier, like the deliverable for that, it's so often just like lives in a Google Doc, and then what happens is like, yeah, you work with someone to get a great narrative done and positioning or whatever, but then it's just like, all right, well then we still need someone to go and do this on the website. And then I also think like the visual identity for a brand is such an important part of that to me is like a timeless company there, where until you can just write a prompt and generate your own website, right? But
like even this idea of like, oh snap, like it's a double entendre, and that like one, like, oh snap, like that's great, but also like the idea of snap and modularity. And so a big part of it is like design systems overall, and thinking about, how do you take these disparate pieces, put them together so you have something that actually works together. Like I think about brand a lot in terms of Legos. And that's a lot of what we're going to be doing, is like helping define what those Lego blocks are, what those bricks are, and helping companies put those together, which I'm super excited about, because it's like usually like you look at that website and it's just like this one kind of monolith, but also like, you got a Google Doc with some lines of copy, and you got maybe a wireframe that only had the hero and then just lorem ipsum throughout. Now, we want to make sure that like when you show up that you come correct and you look good and you feel good, and it's a reflection of like who you are as a company, and that's gonna grow.
Since you're going to be like hiring designers for your own business, do you have any tips and tricks or suggestions for those marketers out here who are like, I need to, how do you hire good designers? What should somebody be looking for?
Curiosity. That's number one for me. Like, regardless of what creative discipline it is, like, okay, cool, you've built 1,000 B2B websites before, or designed 1,000 B2B websites. Like, so what? That doesn't mean you're going to do anything fresh or interesting or innovative. Like, I want to know what people are thinking about outside of work. I want to know what kind of content they're consuming. I want to know what they think looks good, because they're going to, in an interview, everyone's going to tell you your website and your brand are the best and that they love them and whatever else, right? Like that's That's how we interview these days. So like I'm always curious about what they're curious about. And then yes, the skills have to match up. They have to actually be able to do the job that you're looking to them to do. But what is out there beyond B2B? Because this is the like the worst timeline. This is the most boring industry. So where are people actually getting motivated and inspired? Because it's not going to be from my website.
And where would you look? Would you post on LinkedIn that you're looking for a designer? Like, how is there a marketplace you'd go to? Where would you find somebody?
I mean, at this point, like a lot of it would be networking, which is not fair, I guess. But yeah, I would definitely post on LinkedIn. I would definitely look at like design communities on Reddit, and within like WhatsApp and Slack groups. All the Discords, all the kids' toys these days. I don't know. I'm an old man. I mean, we're like the same age, but I feel like an old man. Anyway. I don't know. Like I've been shoveling. My back hurts.
Yeah, that's good. You got to use your core.
But yeah, like I would still primarily rely on my network. And like at this point, like I've been fortunate enough across my career to work with a lot of really talented people who are in leadership positions now, where it's like I could say, hey, who do you know, or who do you wish you hired, whatever it might have been, and try to get referrals that way.
Cool. All right, Dmitry, thanks for hanging out. I got to wrap. Good to see you. Good luck with OSnap. You can see Dmitry on LinkedIn. Go follow him there. He's also active inside the Exit 5 community. And maybe when OSnap is ready, you can find some great people to work with through Exit 5. All right, man. Good to see you.
I love that. You too, Dave.